And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
Oh gosh, y'all, we're very excited because today our guest is Drew Hancock, the writer and director of the upcoming horror movie Companion, starring Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is very exciting.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. I was scarred so much. The funny thing is, when I was like, today, I spent this morning going like, okay, there's not a lot, but there was that moment. And then it was like all these repressed memories of things that scared the shit out of me. Like you like forced me to relive them, and I'm excited to talk about them, but they really did. I was kind of surprised at how many started. Like once the floodgates opened, it just poured out.
I feel like we've revealed a lot of repressed childhood memories on this show with so many people at this point. I like almost feel bad, and also like we should be charging for our services.
Yes. This is therapy for sure. Because there were a couple of these that I were months of my life. Like every night I would go to bed with this image in my head.
Oh, can't wait.
Excited to talk.
Me too. But so before we do get to all of that great scarredness, can you tell listeners a little bit about Companion? And I'm going to let you guys know that we'll be talking about one of the first reveals in the film, probably. So if you want to go in blind, I will put a time code to skip ahead to. This is your warning.
Your warning.
We're going to talk about one of the first reveals because it's going to be revealed in the marketing. But boy, let me tell you, when I was surprised as hell at what happened, and that doesn't happen to me very often. But Drew, for our listeners, can you talk a little bit about Companion?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess like first off, it was a project that was kind of born out of necessity, honestly. I'd been a TV writer for 10 years.
You've written on a lot of different shows. Very different.
My IMDb is kind of a mess. I'm proud of everything that I've done. There's nothing like, even like Fred 3, I'm extremely proud of. Like I will go to bat for that. I'll go to bat for that fucking movie any day. I love that script. I channeled my inner child in that script, but like, that being said, like I didn't have anything that kind of represented my voice. And Companion was born out of just me wanting to kind of show the world that I could work in genre. And that's also why the movie kind of shifts tones so often, because I'm like, maybe this is the last movie I get to write. Maybe this is the last thing I write that people read. So let's show them I can do, a thriller, a horror, a comedy, a heist movie, a relationship drama. Like, let's just throw it all. The joke I always make is I threw everything at a wall, took what stuck, then I went back to the wall, picked up everything that landed on the floor, put that into. So it's a kitchen sink movie. Extremely proud of it. I'm extremely proud of Sophie, her performance. I think she's unbelievable in it. And I think that was a good way of talking about it without talking about the plots.
It very much was. That's actually incredibly impressive. That was really impressive.
Yeah, I think because I've tiptoed around it so much. I think that I've gotten that I'm like a martial arts artist, like when it comes to avoiding the spoiler.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
This is one of those movies where like I don't envy you doing PR for it, because there's a lot that like I would love to talk about, but I also I will be honest, I do not want to ruin the experience I had, because we were talking a little bit before you came on. My brain tends to just pick apart and try to figure out what the twist is or where the movie is going. And the first reveal in this, I literally paused the movie and went, "What?" And then like 15 minutes later, I paused it again, and I was watching with my roommate, and I was like, "Listen, I am impressed with the little nuggets that you put in there that I did not even pick up on, that like end up telling you what is happening with the first surprise." And I was like, this is a movie that genuinely surprised me and brought so much joy to my life, because I don't get that very often, unfortunately.
Well, that is the ultimate compliment. Thank you so much. I wish that we lived in a world where people would watch content without like spoiling anything.
I wish so much you could have kept it a secret the whole time with all like
and so many people.
I know
on
that's
our
like
team,
the era we live in, but like, could you imagine? It would just be so cool to have everyone like see that when it's in theaters.
and so I mean, we had the Beyond Fest screening.
That's true.
Screening.
Oh, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I got to experience an audience like I wish I could just bottle that up, like because that was so special. Because I think that everyone's going to see all the nuggets. I think all the Easter eggs are going to like people are just going to like to me it's like minute one you're going to know exactly what's happening. And we actually had a test screening where we I'm still tiptoeing around saying the one word that I don't want to say, because once you say that word, you can't unsay it. But I'll say it now. Spoiler. About 20 minutes in, you discover that the protagonist of this movie is a robot, that she's unaware of that she's a robot. But there's a moment when she's walking to the lake where Josh takes out a phone and hits a button. In the test screening, we actually had an alt version of cutting back to Iris where she like twitches, which to me is like undeniable evidence that she's a robot. And even with that in, people gasped at the end. So we ended up pulling back just in case. But to me, that was like proof that if you know what I think the key is? I think the key was early on realizing that voiceover at the beginning saying that she's going to kill Josh makes you think it's a different type of movie. So you aren't looking for you're not. She's not. Her actions aren't under a microscope. You're kind of like thinking about like what's going to drive her to do that.
You're like, it's like Gone Girl. She's going to kill her boyfriend because he's a terrible person, because that's what you expect in this kinds of movies. You're like, okay, what weird fucked up scenario? And it's like, ooh, you surprise.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up Gone Girl, because that is very inspirational for me. And that script, I highly recommend anyone who's interested in screenwriting. The two scripts that if I'm ever feeling like unmotivated and I need to just like a burst of energy and just get inspiration in the writing process for specifically screenwriting, the Gone Girl script, Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl script, is fucking amazing, and Rian Johnson's Looper. They both read they're great reads, and they're like their own little pieces of art. Obviously, Quentin Tarantino's scripts are art in themselves, but Looper and Gone Girl are very special. And so when I was writing Companion, I would always go back to Gone Girl and be like, yes, this is how you write action. This is how you write dialogue. This is kind of a perfect blueprint for a movie.
Well, so I am curious though, how did you make the transition from this, like from comedy writing to this? Like, what was kind of the middle, like little like jumping off point for you into making this movie?
COVID and a lot of luck.
I feel like that is like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah. All right, neat.
Yeah. So like going back to what I was saying is like I didn't have a writing sample that represented my voice, and so this is my attempt to just be like, okay, maybe like put all your eggs in one basket. This is just going to be. I had left my reps, and I like to set the bar as low as I possibly can, and if you leap over it, you leap over it. But I was like, I just want to have a writing sample that represents my voice and get new reps. That's the bar I want to cross. The irony is I had like 5 producers attached to it before I even got new reps. Like I just, from building connections from the last 10, 15 years, I have enough people that I can send stuff out to be like, hey, like JD Lashitz, who works for Boulder Light, just an acquaintance that he was like, he produced Barbarian. I'll send it to him. He read it. And within 24 hours, he's like, we want to make this. We're sending it to Roy Lee, who I don't know if people on this podcast know who Roy Lee is, but he's kind of like the godfather of producers. He does he started out like doing the Ring movie. He did any J horror adaptation he did.
So much. I saw he was almost like him and Zach. Like what? Like that's so cool.
Yeah, and you meet with him, and he's just an encyclopedia of like short stories and scripts and books, and he just loves content, and he just inhales it. And JD knew him through Barbarian.
Not a lot of producers are like that either, so that's so cool that he actually like is like a repository for the stuff and is a fan, isn't just in it for, you know, the money, is in it because he actually really loves the stories. That's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, and he makes a lot of money because he owns the rights to like Lego movies and Godzilla movies, and he could easily like stop, but
I know.
I love that he peppers his resume with like these really special tiny movies, like, you know, like Strange Darling. I don't know if you saw that movie.
Yeah.
Barbarian. Yeah. So he's a champion of the small like genre movie. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
We do though.
We need more Roy Lees. So anyway, sent it to JD. He attached himself. He sent it to Roy Lee, who attached himself. Roy sent it to Zach Krager. This is all within a week. So I finished the draft. I wrote the end of the script, and I already had like Zach read it, and he was like, "I want to direct this." There was a brief period where Zach was going to direct it, and so pre-Barbarian's release, Zach read it, said he wanted to be his next movie. I knew that probably wasn't going to happen because I not only had I read Barbarian, but I heard it's amazing, and then I ended up subsequently seeing it before it was released. And I was like, "Oh, this guy is going to be able to do whatever he wants to do. Like Barbarian's going to come out, it'll be number one, and he's going to be able to do his passion project." And that's exactly what happened. It came out, and he was given this opportunity to make his next movie, which is Weapons. But this is, you know, all this like moments of good fortune for me from working like for 5-6 weeks. We worked together polishing the script together. And as soon as he realized he wasn't going to direct it, he went to Boulder Light and Vertigo, which is Roy Lee's company, and he kind of championed me to direct it. And I was not expecting this at all. I directed in my 20s. I kind of walked away from it to just concentrate on writing, and I was planning on coming back to it, but I never really thought, because I'm a realist and know how this industry works, is that I wouldn't be given the opportunity. I'd be probably hurting the movie if I attached myself to direct it, because you would be, you know, you're committing to a lower budget with a first time director. But I think going in with that mindset, it just helped me, because then suddenly Krager is championing me, and they all luckily said yes. And Boulder Light had this deal going on with New Line, and so I ended up not, you know, compromising the movie. It had a decent budget for a movie that size, and so like everything, the planets just aligned. It's a really crazy story, and just for your listeners, that it's like this was after 10-15 years of working and making connections and trying and writing scripts.
Everyone hates to hear it, but networking really is it's just the way of this world. You know what I mean? It's like who you've met, who you've worked with, and who, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I always say don't network, make friends.
Exactly.
Because if you network, you can feel people like building a network, and it's just wouldn't want to hang out with you. Like if you sit down, like, first make sure you want to be friends with these people, and then you can use them for the connections, because they'll want to help you out, and that's
and they're probably working on cool stuff anyway. That is, you know what I mean? That's awesome.
Yeah. Find people with the same taste as you. And
yes. Oh God. Please, everyone, I swear it's so much. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
So this cast is like a who's who of really great young actors. I was really happy to see Megan Suri, Lucas Gage, Harvey.
Lucas Gage having a moment. Like, love that for him.
He's so many moments.
I know. Yeah. He's like, I love whenever he pops up in something, because it's like, whether it is in Midnight Kiss, or whether it's oh gosh, what is that movie? Is it Down Low that he just did with
with Zach Levy? Zach
Quinto. Yeah, like there's so many. Like I love seeing him, and so I was really happy to see him in here. And of course, I mean, Sophie and Jack, of course, are great. But like I was like, I love the supporting cast that you have. What was it like working with such emerging talent?
It was a dream. I also got them before they had their big egos, so they were all easy to work with. So I mean, and they all deserve it. They deserve to have big egos because they are so talented. But everyone on this cast was so easy to work with and game. And, I mean, like, yeah, we do have, a New Line logo at the beginning of our movie, but it really was like an indie movie, like the way we made this movie. It was more indie than studio. And so you're shooting long hours, and we didn't have trailers, and, like the craft service was fine. But it wasn't the kind of craft service that like a big, like, Blue Beetle level, craft service. So the fact that we like so committed each day, it was such a blessing. And yeah. And they're all also great at their jobs.
I feel like that makes it even easier when they're so great at their jobs and you get to just watch people take your words and make it even cooler. That's such a fun, it's got to be so fun as a writer and a director to experience that.
Yeah, especially as a director, when you're a director and you don't have to do any work and you're just like, I did that. I directed that performance. And it's just really just like...
I take all the credit for that. All of the talent they poured into that. That was me.
Yeah. You're welcome, everyone. Cut. I would always say you're welcome and then cut after every take. Yeah. That's my secret.
That's the secret of being a good director, everyone. I'll do that on my next one. Heck yeah, I'll take that from your book, of your directing book. But not to like get too spoilery, but I am curious about why you wanted to you tackle so much in here, but specifically you're really looking at, I think, to me, like romance and love and relationships in the modern era. And what about that was so compelling for you in making this movie? Because I have many thoughts about like gender representation, but I'm curious from your perspective, why that was so important to tackle.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't approach it from like, there's no like, coming from like, I wanted to tell a story about male toxicity or, being in controlled relationships. Honestly, where it comes from is just like what's the most interesting story to tell, and how it can become a metaphor for things that are happening in our own lives, and that kind of happens organically as you're writing it. Like a great example of it is like when I first came up with the idea. What popped into my head was the log line of the movie. I thought, okay, 3 couples go to a house in the middle of nowhere. One of them finds out they're a robot and they're going to get shut down. And so they go haywire and kill everybody. And so the very first iteration of that, I didn't write this, but in my head, like when I was starting to outline it, Iris was I was the antagonist. Iris was the bad guy, because it's just of course, like AI is evil, robots are evil. Like, and as soon as I started thinking about the progression of the story, and as soon as they got to the house, and I was thinking about her, and she's meeting his friends, and she's feeling alienated, I'm like, I'm relating to the robot more than I'm relating to the people. And as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, this could be a story about a robot finding empowerment, and is that a possibility? And can she be more relatable to the human characters? And can she be more human than the human characters? And that was that. As soon as that came in my head, that was like the most exciting thing. And I was like, okay, this could be something different than all the fucking AI gone wrong movies. Luckily, I did that too, because 6 months later, Megan came out after I was writing. I was like, so glad I didn't do that.
Okay. I was curious when you were working on this, because it's been like, again, as you probably know, the AI is like a genre thing now. So seeing this was just so refreshing. So, okay.
Make me feel sorry for the AI. Like that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a hat trick.
Thank you. That's a testament to Sophie's performance. I mean, she's so charismatic and believable. And then, so that became the math problem for the movie, which is like, can you find empathy out of the sympathy out of the non-human character? And, and that led to really interesting conversations about technology with like Jack and the human characters, and like, well, when is this taking place? It's probably from my, I don't do a lot of like tech research because I don't want to get bogged down. Like I'm more interested in the emotions, and then than the actual like tech stuff. So all I needed to find out was when this technology might exist, and and the earliest it's probably going to be available is like 15 years is when I heard. And so I was like, okay, well,
that's too soon.
Yeah. I know. Well, the way yeah. Well, as soon as like the singularity happens, or like the technology is going to move incredibly fast with quantum computing and all that. So just thinking about what's the world going to look like in 15 years, and what if this technology existed, and how is that going to affect humans? If your phone looked like a human, how are you going to treat other human beings? And so that became a fun exercise in like that's why Jack doesn't react to Eli, his best friend, dying. It's because he's objectifying all humans at that point in his life, and so that's just a commentary of like what like where would technology be? How would that affect our relationship with human beings? And so that's all the stuff that's all the like the food that I like the writer food that I'm like, oh yes, that's great, and you don't have to have an answer for it, but it's a fun conversation to have, and then of course the idea of being programmed. We've all been in relationships that you are kind of in service for the other person, and then you break up with that person and you're like, oh, I was brainwashed. So it's a great metaphor for being in a controlling relationship. And then the male toxicity thing. It's like, if you're going to make a character that's a female that's being controlled, the antagonist of the movie has to be a character that's controlling. And so immediately your story is going to be about, male toxicity. And it's really fun to have that come from a baby-faced man-child like Jack Quaid, who's the perfect foil in the scenario.
Yes.
Yep.
He really is.
He really is. I literally wrote, thank God it's not another neckbeard living in their mom's basement, just because I feel like... But it's true. I feel like we have to just, like, it's such much more insidious than that. You know what I mean? I feel like there's an idea of, like, oh, this is this kind of person. I'm like, no, they're fucking everywhere. And I know that, like, it didn't just come from that, but I think it does such a good job of showing that, like, even the cute guy that you think is normal might not be normal. And I think that's just, like, an awesome, like, little through line as part of this that I think is just so relevant to relationships nowadays and how easy it is to hide stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Podcast over. Thanks, guys. Good talk.
Yeah, I also don't want to sell I also don't want to paint this picture that I'm like this guy that like loves like the because it's very, they're like, I'm saying like I'm very excited about writing about this morbid stuff, but it's just ripe for, it's just ripe
fun, for
conversation.
Writing.
Yeah.
And it's like really interesting the thought experiments you get engaged in too, like you were talking about. And you're just like, it's like creative, and it feels like it unlocks things creatively in a way too. That's gotta be again, like you're trying to break out into genre, and it seems like a really cool way for you to dig into genre while also like tapping in a little bit to your roots with the morbid.
Yeah. The roots to the morbid.
Yeah. But speaking of your roots, actually,
yes.
Yeah,
good segue.
How did you get into horror? Like, how was your introduction to the genre? Was it as a child?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been obsessed with horror. I've been obsessed with movies since I was a kid. Like I
cool.
Like really like I've never really been even during peak TV. I've always been more of a movie guy, which is funny because I worked in TV and I kind of did that because that's where all the jobs were, and I had to have that. I had to have COVID kind of force me to go, what are you doing? You love movies. Write a fucking movie, you asshole. Like, and so that's where Companion came from. But no, I've always been fascinated with horror. They've always, as a kid, it would give me nightmares, and I don't know why I kept coming back to them. Like I have so many nightmare fuel stories here. But
what was the first horror movie you ever saw? Do you remember? Is it different than the one we're talking about today?
I don't remember the first horror movie. I do remember my dad like dubbing tape. I don't remember. He was like transferring something to we had a Betamax. I mean, this is how old I am. We had a Betamax
too.
And my dad was like transferring Aliens to Betamax, and he had the last 5 minutes were on with the big alien queen fight scene, and for some reason I was in the room and I'm like, what do you watch? And he let me watch that, and I was like 5 or 6. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. that scared the shit out of me. That was like my first time being like, what is this? And then I also remember, this is not a movie, but Michael Jackson's Thriller. Someone like my cousin was watching that at my grandma's house, and the werewolf imagery. I remember I remember driving home, my mom driving me home, and we passed like a forest, like Fontenelle Forest or something in Omaha, and I remember just being terrified what was inside that forest, for sure.
It's so funny because we just talked with Tillman Singer about Thriller. That was his Scarred for Life pick was Thriller.
It's got zombies and werewolves, and you're a kid, and I think because it's a music video, adults are like, oh, anyone can watch it. So it was unprotected, for sure. There's a lot of things that are unprotected here, like the poster for the Blob, the 1988 poster for the Blob, like the it has which is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Like as an adult, I think it is one of the most subversive, most smart, special, first real meta horror movie. Everyone go see 1988 Blob. It's a perfect movie. Frank Darabont.
Go see
it's
it,
so
please.
So good.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite remakes. It might be my favorite remake, honestly.
It's perfect. It's perfect, even down to the Kevin Dillon casting and his hair. So
right.
But that poster, I remember the poster.
Oh, that poster
gave me nightmares.
Gnarly. Yeah, it's gnarly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when I was writing down, a lot of my things that I was scared of weren't from horror movies either. Like has anyone ever talked about Superman 3?
No.
Really? Oh my God.
Which one is that one?
Superman 3 is the one with, what's his name? Richard Pryor.
Okay.
There's a scene at the end, there's a supercomputer, and it like sucks a woman into the computer, and it like suddenly like grafts all these wires and metal bits to her and turns her into a cyborg. And that, I forgot about that. That's one of those memories I repressed that I came out today. I remember I was terrible. I was terrified for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that was again, finding something that's like that adults were just shoving in our faces. That was at a school, like our school showed that at like a movie night. And I was like, in first grade, kindergarten.
80s were a wild time when it comes to that.
Yeah. Howard the
Yes, Howard the Duck. I always
Howard
think
the Duck
about
scared the shit out of me.
How like they did
weird. Howard the Duck. Sorry, Terry. I'm sorry.
It is. No, Howard the Duck is so bizarre.
Jeffrey Jones, when he did the transformation, like that movie is like a kid shouldn't watch that to begin with, but the Jeffrey Jones that for other reasons, not the real life reasons that Jeffrey Jones is scary to kids, but when he transforms in the diner, that was rough.
But also, like, the 80s had a lot of cartoons that were from horror. Like we had, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. We had that. We had like, Ghostbusters. They were making toys for aliens, like little kids' toys.
Yes.
So, like, that I had like Ripley with her flamethrower. Like that was like a time where they were advertising so much of these dark, horrible for kids movies to kids. Like that, it was a thing. And
then I guarantee you've already had there's no way that you haven't done an episode about Return to Oz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who brought that, but Return to Oz.
It was like one of our first episodes.
Yeah, it was Bria Grant.
It was like one of the very first. Yeah.
Yeah. My friend's mom took me to see it, and I remember being like, "What is wrong with this woman? This is not a movie I should be seeing." Like being disappointing in her parenting. Like these Wheelers are very scary.
Oh, they're terrifying. The woman that would replace her head. Yeah. Like that was just, what were people thinking?
No. Yeah.
Oh my
but
God.
That was another one that I repressed. I forgot about until today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
But are you still scared? Like, do you still get scared like that when you watch horror movies?
I actually, this is really funny. I watched Oddity. Did you guys see Oddity?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see the poster behind. I have the giant Oddity poster behind my chair. Yeah.
Oh, and you have Revenge. You have Revenge too, which is I watched a bunch for before Shooting Companion. Actually, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's so cool.
And I got to meet her on Saturday. She was very, very nice.
Oh,
Coralie. I did the same thing. And she's very humble and
I know.
and like down to earth. I'm like, you shouldn't be. You're a genius.
Just
So
like
good.
creative side note, I just directed my own rape revenge movie. She was a massive inspiration, and like I wrote my master's thesis about revenge. So like this movie like changed my life. So I'm like very, very I love her, and so everything with the substance, I'm like, us freaks have a chance. It's just nice. Yeah,
and how well the substance is doing. And I don't know why. That like Long Legs. It's these movies that I love. I'm not saying I don't know why because I don't think they're good movies. I thought Substance and Long Legs were two of my favorite movies of last year. But like I don't understand why those ones connected with people. But I'm so like thrilled that they did.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway.
Demi Moore just won a Golden Globe for it. I was really happy to see that.
I think that's
Great.
fantastic news for the Oscars. They're going to legitimize it even more. So I would really hope that she gets nominated for Best Director. That would be a game changer for sure.
I would cry. I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
Anyway, Oddity.
Yeah. Okay. So Oddity, I watched, and I'm embarrassed to say this. I just missed the theatrical release because I was in All Things Companion, so I didn't get to see everything in the theater last year. So I watched Oddity on the plane on my iPad, and I was pretty scared. But the funny thing is, there was a jump scare in the movie that I jumped at, and the guy sitting next to me jumped. I was like, "Oh, he's watching my screen." It was a great way to catch someone's screen, like sharing with me,
and also creepy. Like,
it's like when you see the Wooden Man on an iPad, how are you not gonna look away?
Oh,
or how are you gonna look away?
I hosted a screening, and a grown man at a point in that movie screamed out loud when they revealed the Wooden Man. Like when he's looking up at that one part, he screamed. I said, "I love this movie." It's so good.
I love that movie, and it was. I can't remember the part, but that definitely got my heart racing. And then when I saw The Descent in the theater, whenever that came out, that was so brilliantly executed in that they would take a very relatable fear like claustrophobia that everyone has to some degree, like just thrust you into that, and then like a magician like wave his hand, like suddenly replace it with monsters, and it's such a great I don't even know what a bait and switch for emotion that I almost like when they were like getting through doing the spelunking and getting farther and farther into the caves, I almost left the theater. I was like, I don't think I can do this. I might have to tap out.
When I watched it too, I felt the same way. Like I didn't see it in a theater, but I watched it. I was like, there doesn't have to be anything actually like supernatural here. This makes me want to die just watching it as a spelunking movie. Like, are you kidding me? When she's stuck and she can't move, I was like, this is it. I can't do this. Like, I can't. Yeah. Movies are terrifying. How is this not real? I don't understand. Like, it blew my mind.
Yeah. And they do something really smart at the beginning is that little cold open where the guy gets killed in such a surprising way that makes you go, oh, I can't trust this movie. So, it puts you on the edge of your seat and you don't really know where it's going. So I wish that, what happened to that guy? Neil Marshall. He did something called Doomsday that wasn't very good, but
I love
he became a team
director. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Doomsday because it is like maximalist. It's like you want a little bit of like Mad Max, we're going to throw that in there. You want like a cannibal like movie, we're going to throw that in there. We're going to just
there's like take you through the Round Table in there too, right? And Escape from New York, and
it's like let's just throw everything together and see. And I'm like, yes, I love that.
I need to watch it again.
They just released it on 4K, and I have like the copy. I haven't watched it yet, but they just because like for a long time it was hard to get. But I have that, and I cannot wait to sit down and actually rewatch it because I haven't seen it since the movie theaters. But I saw The Descent on a bootleg copy because I didn't know when it was ever going to come here, and it was very dark, and so like none of the little hints of the monster in there. I didn't know anything about it. And so like it was we get to that point and I'm like, I literally was watching it on my computer with my headphones in. I literally fell out of my chair and scared the shit out of my cat because I was not I was not expecting it. My cat just like took off running.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's the reveal on the video camera, right? So you're in night vision?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
great
until that point.
Yeah.
I was like, this movie is terrifying as it is. And then you get to that and it's like, oh, all hope is gone.
Yeah.
They're so fun.
I almost think that maybe they should have done that instead of the teasing of the monsters at the beginning. Like, because they did like a couple of shadow. Yeah. No, I think it would have maybe worked even better, but who's to say? That movie's great. I love that movie.
It is.
So that was one of the few times that I was scared as an adult.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. All right, but then, Drew, what movie did you bring with you today that scared you the most as a kid?
I brought a movie. It's a little indie movie that no one has seen before, so you're probably going to shut off your podcast. I was trying to say like tape recorders, but no one uses tape recorders anymore. You're going to shut off your phone. The Shining, which I'm sure you had to have done The Shining.
Oh,
at some
yes.
point.
Yeah.
We
have, but long, long ago. So this is our first time revisiting it in quite some time. So, I'm going to read a synopsis. I'm sure most people don't need one, but just in following format of our show. Per IMDb, a family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter when a sinister presence influences the father into violence. At the same time, his psychic son sees horrifying forebodings from both past and future.
Yeah. That's The Shining.
That is The Shining. All right,
I don't know if I would have seen that movie if that's a bad long
I know.
It's
Sometimes it's like, I don't know who's putting these in here, but
that's why we like using them, because they're so fucking weird that sometimes it's like, what is that? Anyway.
There's like a new trend I've seen on TikTok of someone like poorly explaining a movie, and this feels in that similar vein. But anyway,
Jesus.
take us back, Drew. How did you see this movie? How old were you? What was the situation? We want to hear your horror story. Give us everything you remember from the first time you saw this.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's a reason I picked The Shining, and I debated, like, is that too obvious? But it's played a part of my life for like. There's actually like a couple chapters to this story that is not just like the first time I saw it.
Okay.
There's like pre-seeing it and like the what it represented to someone who hadn't seen it yet, and then it's me seeing it, and then there's a little third act twist that happens that like kind of like I'll save that, but let's not skip over that part. So what The Shining was to a kid that's growing up in the 80s is there are movies that you talk about on playgrounds, that like there's that kid that saw that movie, and you start to, it's almost like that kid becomes a celebrity because you're like, oh my God, he saw Jaws. This kid saw Jaws, but Shining was one of them. And I think because as a kid, the imagery of obviously like big hotel, big rooms, you're tiny. It really captured like the tone, like the idea of being a kid, right? Like big wheels running in the snow. Your father chasing you with an axe like that. That's like a fucking nightmare fuel, like for a kid. So like, I don't know how you're picking up this imagery. The book, I remember being scared of the book because it's like, it has one of my favorite book covers, which is like this all silver with the blank face of it. I don't know if you remember that paperback
I'm trying to
remember. I still have my original copy.
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's written by Stephen King, and he like that name meant so much to kids on the playground too. Like like anything that he touched was just. I remember having a dog-eared copy of Skeleton Key that was my sister's, Skeleton Crew that was my sister's. Skeleton. What am I? Now I'm confusing that fucking start. The one that not Night Shift, the other one, Skeleton Crew, right?
I think it's Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm blanking. I think because that Star Wars show is confusing me. Anyway. It's like, not that.
Yep.
No, my sister had a copy of that. And I remember not intending to read it, but keeping it in my room just to be like, I have this thing. And I'm not afraid of it. It represents everything I'm scared of, but I'm not going to read it, but it's in my room. And I remember that like represented kind of, just horror in general, I guess. But yeah, so someone would have seen The Shining and would kind of recount like breaking the door down with an axe and the hedge maze and hearing about all these like really creepy images and the name The Shining. It's so absurd. Like,
oh yeah,
the Shining. Like, what is The Shining? Like, that's a really weird word for a title of a movie. And then I don't think I actually saw it until I was like 10 or 11, but I had a friend in Omaha who had a VHS tape, and it had Firestarter. It was written in hand. It was like a handwritten Firestarter, Dead Zone, The Shining, and he gave it to me. So it's on whatever that like extended play mode. So it's like the shittiest quality. It's like 6 hours. It's just terrible quality. And so I would watch. I think I watched Firestarter once, and I was young, but I recognized that it's not great. And I couldn't get through Dead Zone. I've since come back and I love Dead Zone. Like, Dead Zone to me is like a vibes movie. It's like you sit with that on and just like veg out on it. It's a weird fucking movie in that it's so segmented.
I remember I had a similar reaction to it as a kid. When I first saw it as a kid, I was very creeped out by Christopher Walken, and the whole thing just felt very weird. I had read the book and I was like, I don't know. Now as an adult, I revisited because one of my other podcasts I do has been revisiting Cronenberg and Lynch's filmography together. And I rewatched that for the first time, and since I was a kid, and it's like, man, there's actually some good stuff to this. This is a good, as you said, a vibe movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you how popular the Gorley and Russ podcast is, but they always coin like I don't know if you've listened. They talk about horror movies and they talk about cozy horror movies, and to me, Dead Zone is a cozy horror movie, and that's a weird thing to say, but it's like he's wearing it's cold weather and he's wearing a sweater, and like the music is very kind of sweeping and comfortable, but you still have those creepy scenes of a guy killing himself by shoving scissors into his fucking mouth, which is, I'll never forget that. But yeah, so the real reason I had that VHS wasn't those two movies. The reason I had that VHS was because The Shining. And so I would watch it over and over and over and over again, even though it scared the fucking shit out of me. Terrible quality. And it's starting to get those like degradation, and so it's just certain parts that you maybe see a couple more times than others start to get more degraded than others. But that. And I'm kind of amazed that that movie is a weird movie for a kid to like, because it's so atmospheric and ethereal, and there's no character arcs. It's just kind of things happening, and Jack Nicholson is just as all the reasons that Stephen King hated it, I think, are what's great about it is it feels so different, and it's a weird movie. And I think I wish that I'd known that I was going to do this because I wasn't prepared for it. But like the Letterboxd top 4, I was like, okay, I've got until the January 30th or January 27th is the companion premiere. And so I've got until then to figure out what my top 4s are. But I did this variety event on Saturday, and the Letterboxd was there, and they were like, okay, your top 4. And I was like, wait, what? I'm doing it now. And I biffed it. And so I would have been like, no, I can't do this. I'm not prepared. No. I can't do it. I was not alerted. I don't have it ready. Yeah, I was like offended, just as I was with my friend's mom. It's like, how dare you? I wish that I'd said The Shining, because The Shining is so special, and it's something that I always go back to, and I love. And and I do, every time I see it, I think about why is it as a kid? I mean, we would love to hear your guys' thoughts on like why a kid would be fascinated by such a esoteric horror movie.
I mean, I'm okay.
Oh yeah, you're the wrong one to ask about this one.
I historically do not like this movie.
It's very funny. It's not as contentious as it once was, but I used to give a lot of shit because I love The Shining. I love this movie.
So my story was, as a kid, there was a time when all of a sudden my parents wouldn't let me watch rated R movies. Like, originally it was, they allowed me to watch it, and then as the 80s progressed, it was like, oh, there's a lot of nudity and stuff, so we're not going to let you. So I retreated into books, and Stephen King was like the author that I gravitated to. My mom gave me it was The Dragon's Eye, I think is what it was called. It was his like fantasy novel. Eye of the Dragon, yeah. And that was like my introduction to Stephen King. And then I became a voracious reader because I was not allowed to watch horror movies, but they weren't policing the books I was reading. So I read, when I was like, I think between 10 and 13, I started reading all of these Stephen King novels. And The Shining was one of my favorites as a kid. And so everything had been talked up about the movie. So by the time I actually did see it, I don't remember how old I was. I was in my teens, I believe. But by the time I finally saw the movie, I was like, how are they going to do the hedge maze that comes alive and start as the animals and start, attacking? How are they going to do this?
Oh, no. I forgot
the ending in
this.
the book where like the boiler explodes and the whole hotel goes up in flames, and like, how are they going to do this? I'm like, how is this all going to happen? And none of that was in there. And I was so excited about Halloran, and he finally arrives and he gets an axe to the chest, which isn't in the book. He like helps save the day. And I'm like, none of this is what I remember from the book. What are they doing? And so I was so angry. And so for the longest time, I have not enjoyed this movie any single time I watched it. That said, I did put it on last night and I started watching it, and I was vibing to this movie in a way that I have never done in my entire life.
Wow,
all 44
Drew,
years of my life.
We've cracked it. You've cracked it somehow. You are the special sauce.
I'm glad that I can be the starting point for your new love of The Shining. But it's funny that you said that. Like I have very similarly. I did the King's Cast, and I talked about this. But I have a moment in my childhood where my parents also didn't want me watching horror movies. That didn't stop me from trying as hard as I could to watch them and sneaking up. I would always sneak up and watch movies at like when my parents went to bed. But I remember I have a distinct memory of being in the B. Dalton bookstore in Omaha with my mom in middle school or 7th grade, and my mom saying, out of the blue, you can pick one book in this entire bookstore and I'll buy it for you. It doesn't matter what it is. It can't have to be a picture book. But I'll buy it for you. It was like, any book? And she's like, any book. And I think I was testing the boundaries, because I immediately went to Stephen King out of just pure curiosity to see what I could get away with. And I picked Night Shift, and I brought Night Shift back, and I still have that. I still have the book. And she said yes, and she said, if you read it all and you want to read another one, I'll buy that too. And so they were very supportive of my reading, and that's what got me into reading. To her credit, she was a genius, because that's what got me into reading, and I became obsessed with Stephen King, and I read everything, and even like the Dolores Claiborne and the things that a kid shouldn't even really enjoy, like you're reading. And
I know. Being a young kid and reading Misery and Dolores Claiborne, not exactly the right audience for it, but I was right there with you.
Oh my God. I read The Green Mile when I think I was in middle school. Why? I loved it though. It was the first book that made me cry.
And that was did you read it when it was coming out in installments? That was like a kind of a gimmick book.
No,
where he was doing like a one each couple weeks.
I'm quite a bit younger, so I did not. I unfortunately did not get to experience that. I read it from my library copy.
Yeah, that's great still.
For me, though, I loved The Shining. I wanted so badly to not see it and to see it at the same time as a kid, because I think I have a distinct memory of like going to my dad's house, and he showed it to me, but it was on TV and like the end was on, and I was just like super confused about what was happening. I was like, what? Why is she running in a kitchen with a knife? Like, what is going on? And but my stepmom at the time, my now ex-stepmom, was like, you can't watch this. This is too scary. And I looked at her and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, I don't think you know like who I am. She didn't ever really get me either, so whatever. Yeah. But I was so intrigued by the vibes. And I think when I watched it, I cannot remember how old I was when I watched it, but like I was still young. Like I wasn't super young, but I think I was probably like in like the 11 to 13 range, which I still feel like is young to like fully understand what is going on with that movie. But I loved it because it was so vibey. I loved not having everything explained to me. I loved not like just feeling like I was like dumped into the middle of a story and just have to piece it together. Like there was something about the way this narrative was presented that was so interesting to me. And like I obviously didn't really understand like the more human stuff kind of like I got it, but not as deep as I do now, obviously, but I knew that something was wrong. And like, I also, this is very weird. I always wanted psychic powers as a kid. Like all I wanted were psychic powers. And so like, I was like kind of jealous of Danny Torrance, which I know sounds insane, but like I was kind of jealous that he could, like talk to people with his mind and could see things. Like, I wanted nothing more than to be like a weird little freak who could see ghosts. So like I will say I was jealous of Danny Torrance like a little bit. Not a lot, but like there was part of me that was like a little bit jealous of Danny Torrance. Because again, like, but what I think Kubrick does so well is like he shoots so much of it from the kid's level as a kid. So you feel like a kid. So it feels it feels scary, but not in the same way. And I think when watching it as a kid, it's like a little bit more easy to identify with it, interestingly enough. Like, I don't feel like you're being treated like you're getting talked down to. Like, Kubrick goes to his level, and you're actually being shown the world from literally his, like, from lower to the ground. And I think that's really, I studied this in grad school, like how effective that is in really getting you to like actually understand a childhood fear. I don't know if it makes sense, but I just think it's an interesting way.
Totally makes sense.
And it just,
I wish that more directors would do that. In fact, I remember that's kind of why I get so fed up of being a writer that other directors were like, I hope this doesn't sound as too like arrogant, but like I was always upset that no directors ever talked to the writer, i.e. me, and said, okay, this scene, whose perspective is this scene? Whose moment is this? They never asked that. And it would just, you would get these kind of this generic coverage. And I think it's so important to always ask yourself, and it can change in a scene, like whose moment it is. It doesn't always have to just be one or the other. And it can also be like an ensemble, like bird's eye view and with no judgment on it. But it is very important to know, I've like PTSD of some scenes that I'm like, oh, you didn't get it from this angle. It's this character's point of view. Like, why didn't you get this one shot?
I feel that so deeply when you're like, I didn't have time for that one setup. Fuck, like that's the one I wanted. I get that.
Yeah. And I don't know why this one popped in my head, but Godzilla, the Gareth Edwards Godzilla is fantastic because it's the first monster movie that's like from the point of view of people. I wish that it got a better, stronger like story, but the way it was shot, it's like any of the times that the monsters are fighting each other, it's from ground level, and it just makes it so much scarier. And it puts you there.
It's the first time I was like, this is a monster that's awe-inspiring. Like I can get why Godzilla is so awe-inspiring because everything is set at the people's level. And even I remember, I'm thinking back to the trailer when they're the kind of teaser where they're dropping out of the Halo plane and they're coming in and it's from their perspective. It's just like everything is from the human perspective, and it makes everything seem so much bigger. And I do think that is something that on this watch that I for The Shining that I was like, okay, I can appreciate that everything is from the kid's perspective, and it kind of made me some of the edges that I had, the issues. I am historically like I do not like the fact that Jack Torrance starts at 100% and goes to 200%. Like that is something that has always been bothered me. But on this watch, I was like, well, but if you were a kid and we're from your perspective,
wearing them down,
and
folks. We're wearing them down.
and you are living with a person that is an alcoholic, that is abusive,
that
has beaten you.
It's already like we were past that point. Yeah.
And so it makes more sense to me on this rewatch why, from Danny's perspective, his dad is already like that. It didn't take a lot of pushing from the Overlook to push him into the madness that he finds. So I do, that is something that I grew to appreciate just on this last viewing. Like, this was a transcendent viewing for me because I have historically not liked this movie at all.
That's great. That's fantastic. And you don't, you have to, like I also struggled with that too, because as being a Stephen King fan, I'd seen the movie so many times that I actually had the opposite reaction when I read the book, because I didn't know Stephen King hated the adaptation when I read the book. And so I'm reading the book going, where's the maze? like why's Halloran living? Like I am doing the exact opposite reaction that you were having. And then I found out subsequently that King hated it because it was like, it is his most personal book. And the reasons he has, totally valid. Obviously, he's the author of the book. But then you watch that the ABC miniseries, and he says it's like a perfect adaptation, and you're like, okay,
yeah, yeah. The thing is, I remember being so excited when that adaptation was coming out as in the 90s. I can't remember what year it came out, but I was so excited because like, yes, this is gonna get it right. Not even realizing what I was walking into, and I was like,
it had been 97 or 98. I was obsessed with those miniseries. I remember loving The Stand and It's another thing that scared the bejesus out of me. But I don't want to skip past like the third act twist of The Shining for me. So I'm watching the movie by myself. Like the DVDs had just come out, and so I'm watching the Shining DVD. So it's the first time I'm watching the movie like a crisp, beautiful version of it. Because before
you can
that,
see everything now. You can actually see the details.
Yeah. And so I'm watching it, and I'm watching it by myself, and I still remember where I was. And this might be the most scared I've ever been when I watched a movie. And I've been trying to tap into this feeling in a way. I don't know how I would, but if I could, it would be really special. But so I'm watching the movie. Danny gets to room 237. It cuts away. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is The Shining. And then Wendy comes to Jack and says, what happened in room 237? Okay, yeah, okay. And so it's going to cut away, and we're not going to see what's in 237. And this is what The Shining is. And Jack goes in, and suddenly we're in the bathroom, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening? I didn't know that the copy of Shining I'd been watching my entire life had that scene cut out of it. And so now I'm watching the scariest scene in the scariest movie, thinking it's happening for me. Like, I'm like having a fever dream, being like, what's going on right now? When is it going to cut away? And it's, my friend didn't tell me that his whoever made it for him edited it out because there's breasts in it.
Yeah.
So they completely took that scene out. And so, yeah, so I'm watching it, and I'm in high school. So I'm like 17, and I don't even think it was that late at night, but it's maybe, I think my mom might've been in the other room cooking dinner. And I'm like, what's happening right now? Like, this movie is unfolding. This movie that I know really well is unfolding in a way that I didn't know. And yeah, that's the most scared I've ever been for any movie. And that really is why I wanted to talk about The Shining. Because it profoundly scared the shit out of me.
I can't even imagine that.
That is why my brain, I'm like, I would have shit my pants. I would be like, what do you mean? There's this whole other horrific scene in this movie that I've seen like countless times, and all of a sudden it's like, surprise, and it's actually even scarier.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that scene's still scary to me now. I mean, the scene with pulling the shower curtain, that's so scary.
Wow.
So I would love to tap into this idea that the content is feeling like it's permanent, but is there a way to kind of tap into this idea of finding yourself in a situation where something you're familiar with is actually evolving or changing based on something? And I think that that's like kind of ripe for something in a horror movie. I don't know how I would do that, but Yeah, I'm always trying to. I want to capture that feeling.
So cool.
Yeah,
that's such like a weird cosmic horror experience. It's like a cosmic horror experience by accident because it obviously was like very much like by design. But imagine like not knowing that someone edited it and it's just like this wasn't there the whole time and you've been gaslit your whole life into think like I don't know. That's something really weird and cool about that like idea.
Yeah, I think that the closest would be like The Ring. In that the short film within The Ring where they keep showing the well, and so you just see the well and it just represents something. It's just a disconnected image, and that's what she comes out of. So it's so much scarier when you're seeing this well imagery over and over and over again, and then something comes out of the well. So that I think that's the closest that kind of taps into that idea. But that was. Yeah,
I mean that was a thing in the 80s, right? Especially with like some people would record stuff off of TV, and so it would have a lot of the stuff cut out, or people would do what she did with it. Like that was the whole thing with my parents. My parents are like, no nudity, no nudity, no nudity, and so like that is something that I probably, if I hadn't managed to get a copy of this from a video store, that probably would have been my experience as well. That is wild, though. I cannot imagine having seen a movie and it being one that you've watched over and over and over again, and then the version you're watching is not the version that you are aware of. That is...
Yeah. And then having to confront my friend and be like, "What? Why was that scene?"
Like, hey, bud, is that actually in the movie, or did I just make that up? Like, can you help me under?
Yeah, what if it like to the end of the story, the second twist of the story is you guys are like, "What do you mean? What scene?"
We should have played it like that.
We really should have. Missed opportunity. The like some kind of like weird podcast horror about some. Yeah. Anyway. Wow. And so you were 17, so like I love it.
16 or 17. Whenever I know I was old enough to be able to drive to the Blockbuster to get The Shining.
And it still scared the shit out of you. I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
In a different way.
Good Lord. Well, have both of you, either of you seen Dr. Sleep?
I've seen it many times.
Okay. I just watched it for the first time like a couple weeks ago because one, I hated the book so much that I was like, I don't care. Oh my God, I hated the book so much too. What the fuck anyone says to me. There's no way it's good. And then finally it was like leaving HBO Max in like a day, and my husband and I were like, fuck it, we're finally gonna watch it. And I was truly and pleasantly surprised with how Flanagan married the two in such an interesting way. You saw the
director's cut, right?
I did. I was like, that's the one everyone talks about. So I saw the director's cut, and like he really... it really is quite special how Flanagan is able to adapt King. It's like, I am always so just an ass, and I'm just like, oh, overrated. No, he's not. Like, I'm not. Like, I can't even joke about that, because I do think Flanagan, like, does actually really get the core of King's work, and seeing how he united two desperate pieces of art that hated each other, and unified them in such an interesting, beautiful way. Incredible. I was really blown away.
Putting what's special about the movie. I hated it the first time I saw it. I put it in a category. I like it now, but I put it in a category of movies that they're kind of like big bloated movies that are very masturbatory, but I can't stop thinking about them. So I return to them and watch them over and over again, and end up I felt the exact same way with Prometheus, which I don't think is a great movie, but I've seen it like 10 times because I keep thinking about the imagery, and that's also kind of like a sequel to a sequel that probably shouldn't exist, and then another movie that came out kind of recently. I hated Nope the first time I saw it, and now I love Nope. Like I love Nope. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a loose connection between any of those, but I've been starting to notice, like, an Interstellar too. And another way I fucking hated and now I love, like these big bloated, lots of ideas, but they don't really work on a first time viewing.
I need to revisit Interstellar because I haven't seen it since the first time it came out, and I also did not like it at all. I was like, what is everyone in love with this movie for? But like, I do feel it's time for a reappraisal. I think it's 10 years
watch
out
it
now?
Again. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, I don't know why I brought that up, but Dr. Sleep, it's great, and I do think Mike Flanagan is very talented. I think his problem sometimes is he gets a little too monologue-y.
Oh yeah,
he likes his long ass monologues, and that's the thing that made The Haunting of Hill House so special, is that he saved them for the right moments.
He used them sparingly.
And then you get Midnight Mass, and it's just all fucking monologues. Like,
just all of it.
The thing is that I love Midnight Mass, but I'll tell you, every time we got to monologue, all right, great. There was like, I saw a lot of people doing like social media skits about like, you know, someone is holding the door open and then ends up monologuing about the entire history of like standing there with the door. And I'm like, yes, this is how I feel watching Midnight Mass. It's a little too much, but I love Midnight Mass as like as what it's doing. It's just those moments. Yeah.
Is he doing the Dark Tower, or am I just is it a dream for me?
Supposedly.
He's supposed to be doing that, but then he's also doing The Exorcist and
he should do Dark Tower.
I would love to see a good adaptation of the Dark Tower. One of my favorite series of books. Yeah,
well, two of my favorite King books are Wizard and Glass and The Wolves of Kala.
Wolves of Kala is one of my favorite. I struggled with Wizard of Glass when I first read it. I stopped halfway through it, but then when he was like, "Okay, I'm going to finish the saga," it's like, "Okay, I'm going to start back from the beginning." And I really grew to like that one. But my first reading of that, I was like, this isn't doing it for me.
Yeah,
but I love Wolves of Kala. That one's great.
Yeah, goddamn, Magnificent Seven, but horror, it's the best.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
so good.
You could probably read that. Yeah, on its own. It's great. It's just about them. Like, this is turning into the Dark Tower podcast, but it's almost like a standalone story of them coming to the small town, and the small town is like every kid, all parents. They have two. Like they when they give birth to their kid, they have twins. Like everyone has twins. And then at a certain time every year, these wolves riding horseback come to this town, and they steal one of the kids and takes them away. And so this is about the town, like saying, "Hey, you guys are coming through this town. Can you help us? Can you stop these wolves from taking, like however many kids from us?"
Yeah.
I think it's such an awesome premise for a book.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's cool as shit.
They're all wearing Doctor Doom masks.
Oh, fuck yeah. What the fuck?
Wild.
All right, cool. That
and Harry Potter wands. It's weird.
Yes. The bits of other IP and other fandom that pop up in that series sometimes is wild.
Yeah.
Stephen King. All right.
Yeah.
That
Sorry, Mary Beth, alienating you with the Omaha and now Stephen King.
I love it. I alienate Terry with enough of my special interest. Yeah. So again, it is only fair that I have my moment of alienation.
One final thing about Dr. Sleep, Rebecca Ferguson. Perfect as Rose the Hat.
Oh, she's my favorite. I mean, the book, to be fair, I like the True Knot stuff in the book. I thought was great. It's all I don't like when Stephen King gets folksy Stephen King, and he gets very cutesy, and the relationship between adults and kids. It's always like a little too like saccharine and gross, and that's like my only complaint about him. And the True Knot stuff is creepy and fun. And I like the idea of like shining vampires is cool.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
And they're scary as shit in the movie too. Like I was legitimately unnerved by them. That scene where they kill that kid is awful. Good Lord.
I think I actually think that's too extreme. Like, I think it's too much. I think it went too far with that scene. Like,
you think so?
I think so. Yeah. It's very, I feel like I'm uncomfortable, but beyond a level, like I want a movie to make me uncomfortable.
That makes sense.
It is definitely very mean spirited.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But apparently, I just watched a YouTube short with Rebecca Ferguson talking about how traumatized she was for that, like shooting that scene, and she was trying to hold back tears. And then they yelled cut, and Jacob Tremblay jumped up and he was like, "Dad, can I get a Coke?" And she was like, "Oh, he's fine."
I forgot that was Jacob Tremblay.
I know.
Yeah. It's been a moment since I've seen it. Wow.
Well, on that note, let's wrap up and give The Shining. I can't wait to hear Terry's rating. Terry, this is the first time after you've seen you have a positive vibe, and we picked naked bathtub women as our rating today, unbeknownst that it would be part of this massive twist.
I didn't even know they were part of it.
I love it. But so, Terry, how many naked bathtub women out of 5 do you give The Shining?
Here's the thing. I on this watch, there were so many little details that I really enjoyed. I love the shot of the hedge maze that ends up going into the real hedge maze. I love, gosh, the cinematography. I think it's the first time I've like really appreciated how, as you were talking, Drew, how like centered to the kid it is. There's so much like on a technical level that I do think this movie does really well. I still have a problem with the Jack Nicholson character. It's something that bugs me because I think it bugs me because it's such an integral part of the book. And I've seen interviews with Kubrick where he was very dismissive of King's writing of characters. And so that kind of still irks me a bit because I do think that the character arc, that Jack Torrance in the movie has no character arc. And that still bugs me. That said, I was deeply uncomfortable with the stair scene where she is swinging the bat. In the first time in my entire life, I was like, this scene is horrifying. I've always like,
really?
I think maybe because as a kid, I think my first introduction to the cinema of this was the Simpsons episode, the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode, where it's like The Shining, and he's like, don't you mean The Shining? And he's like, hush man, do you want us to get sued and all that kind of stuff? Like, so I think that was my going into was that in my mindset. And so I don't know, this last time I was like, that scene like gave me a pit in my stomach in a way that I've never felt watching this movie. So I can't give it 5 stars, but I think I am going to give it 4.5.
Holy shit. Wow. I thought you were going to do 3 and I was going to be happy with 3. So 4.5, that is
3 is what is on my letterbox right now from previously. Cause like,
holy shit, guys,
I do appreciate the merit.
Yeah.
I don't know, this watch, and maybe it was because of the state of mind I was in, but this watch like really, really fucking worked for me. So
great.
Wow.
4.5. We're gonna cut that naked bathroom woman in half, but we gotta do what we gotta do. What about you, Mary Beth? I know you love this movie.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm just like kind of baffled that like,
I know
you gave it. Wow.
I know.
Are you going to go on your letterbox and update it?
I am. I am going to update it.
Wow,
do that right now, in fact.
This is incredible. Mine's a boring 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I just continue to appreciate this movie every time I watch it, and I just you know, we've all heard the behind the scenes about this movie, about how, you know, apparently Shelley Duvall was pushed to tears, but then that might not actually be true, and whatever. Regardless of how you feel about behind the scenes, like, this movie is just so perfectly captures the feeling of like claustrophobia and dread in ways that almost feel like Stanley Kubrick made a deal with the devil. It's like kind of shocking how well it's just like, it's so like, now that I finally made a movie myself, I watch these movies now and I'm just like, I still really don't understand how, like, not that I'm an expert, I made one tiny movie, but like doing it, you're like, it's incredible what the like what directors can accomplish, and the vision.
Well, he had 6 or 7 years, and he's obsessing over it, and unlimited resources, and so
that's a very good point.
And
that's a very good
built
point.
That whole hotel in here. I mean, he could get whatever he wanted, and they went way over budget. And
that's
don't
true.
feel too bad because making a movie is fucking hard, but it's a little easier when you're Stanley Kubrick. Yeah,
it is a little bit easier, but you somehow make it harder for yourself. But regardless, masterpiece. Drew, I have a feeling I know the answer, but regardless, I will
it's a
pass
twist.
it to you.
It's a 1. It's a 1 back. Just kidding. It's a. I mean, I was talking about how I want to put it in my top 4 of all time. So yeah, it's an easy 5.
An easy 5. Makes sense.
Heck yeah.
Shining.
Well, I just updated my letterbox while we're recording, so it is officially out there.
Wow. Jesus.
I love that. And sorry, when do you think this is coming out? So there's going to be like, for your audience to be like, wait a minute, like he changed his rating of The Shining. There has to be a story behind this.
Yeah, this is the 6th of January. So someone
been out. Someone will clock
someone
it
will
too.
Notice.
They will
I'm
clock
sure.
it.
Especially if they listen to the last episode that we did on this back when we first were starting out, and I was shitting on it.
Yeah,
this is quite a change. But thank you so much, Drew, for getting me to reappraise this movie.
Yeah,
for the first time in 44 years. But Are you online? Are you on social media? If so, where can the listeners find you? Are you shaking your head? No, good for you. But the floor is yours to talk about your movie and whatever you can plug.
Yeah, I'm just going to plug. I'm going to plug.
Plug it.
Fucking this up so bad. I'm not on social media. But go see Companion, please. Please go see Companion. January 31st. If you can, try to avoid trailers and posters, and there's even a spoiler on the poster. If you can go in blind, do it. But I also understand that, if you need to do a little research and figure out if it's your kind of movie, do that too. But I would just love as many people as possible to see it.
And do not go to Letterboxd, because people on Letterboxd have no chill with this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of spoilers. There's a lot of spoilers on Letterboxd.
Okay. I told them not to.
There's a lot of people's reviews.
People are still rude. You know what I mean? People are so rude. Give people even a millimeter. They take a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had posted that on Blue Sky. I was like, please go into this movie knowing nothing, because all I could do was the embargo was talking about. I could post on social media that I'd seen it, but no reviews. I was like, do not read anything about this movie. Do not go to Letterboxd. Do not do this, because I was like, Is it
if you're on Letterboxd, should you click on Companion? Are you going to immediately get headlines?
If you see the reviews, it's the reviews. It's user generated reviews that go out there, and a lot of them are spoiling. Most of them that I've seen spoil that for the first twist, but some of them I've seen in there spoil a lot more.
Yeah. Damn you, Letterboxd.
I know. And it's not Letterboxd themselves' fault. It's random people reviewing it, but
sure.
I feel like when I look, I just click on the reviews. I don't see any. If you don't click into any of the reviews,
okay.
As long as as long as it's not an accident, it's going to be an accidental. My favorite accident. And sorry to make this go even longer, but my favorite spoiler reveal is The Sixth Sense, and it was spoiled on the score. The last song, song on the score is called "Malcolm is Dead."
Is it really?
So if you'd bought the score to Sixth Sense, you would read, and you hadn't seen it before, and you're reading the back, you're like, "What the fuck? What did I just read?" But yeah.
Oh, wow. Maybe they culled some of them, because I definitely do not. But I mean, I see one that well, I'll mention it offline. But yeah, go see this movie, everyone. It's fucking great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Shining, and how shocked are you that Terry has almost given this a 5, because I will never stop talking about it now. Let us know by sending us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on the internet. I'm at MB McAndrews on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at MB.McAndrews on Instagram.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful everywhere.
And follow the podcast on Twitter and Blue Sky at Scarred Podcast, and on Instagram at Scarred for Life Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you, Derek Power, for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. Most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.